Hi guys, what's up? It's Alex here, and today we're going to be doing a preview of the 2013 Chinese Grand Prix. Now, sorry, I've got a bit of a cold, so I might not sound completely the same as I normally do, but I'm going to try my best to get through this commentary and make it entertaining. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting Grand Prix, the third race of the season, and at the moment, Sebastian Vettel leads the championship by a couple of points from Kimi Raikkonen and Mark Webber. So what I'm going to do is go through all of the teams and give my opinion on how they're going to do in this year's Chinese Grand Prix. So I guess the team we should start off with is Red Bull, because they're currently leading the Drivers' and Constructors' Championship after a good Malaysian Grand Prix. Obviously, lots of people are a bit annoyed about what happened in the Red Bull, ignoring team orders, situation or whatever. I still don't really know in my mind what I thought was best. I mean, I obviously do not like team orders whatsoever, but Red Bull have obviously ordered many times for Webber to stay behind Vettel, so it's kind of a hard one to call. I'm not going to voice my opinion on it, but Red Bull, how have they done it in China over the last couple of years? I don't think they have done the greatest. We have seen that they're not the greatest cars in the straight line, which is a bit disappointing for Red Bull fans, but I think this year we'll see Red Bull a bit close to the front, but I don't think we'll see them as close to the front as they have been in the last couple of races this year, because I don't think they're going to have the top line speed, and I think they're going to be good through the middle sector, but it's just through the last sector and the first sector where I think, you know, Red Bull are going to really fall behind. So I expect Red Bull to be there or thereabouts. I'd say Vettel's probably going to get pole position. That's just because he's just so good on the one lap sort of sprints to get pole position, and I think he'll be deserving of that pole position if he gets it, because he's going to have some tough competition this year. And yeah, so expect Red Bull to be there. I think they won't be fastest, but they're going to be right thereabouts, and I expect them to still be leading drivers and constructors at the end of this year's Grand Prix. Let's move on to McLaren next up. They haven't been the greatest car this year. I mean, they only collected a couple of points. They're actually behind Force India in the Constructors' Championship, and yeah, McLaren definitely need to improve their car. They've been they've been struggling a lot, sorry, in the last couple of races. The car just doesn't seem to be there. I mean, we saw in one of the tests, I think it was the Reth test, that the McLaren looked fast, but then it's just all gone downhill since then, and the McLaren really is slower than the Lotus, Red Bull, Mercedes, Ferrari, Force India, at least like the 6th or 7th fastest team now, so they're definitely fighting in the mid-pack, and they're fighting and scrapping for the last points. And I'm going to say, once again in China, that's going to be what McLaren are going to be there. They're going to be scrapping at the low end of the points, just trying to get some points before we get to Spain, where I think they're going to bring a mega upgrade, which hopefully should mean they're going to win again. Next up, we'll talk about Ferrari. Now, over the last couple of races, we've seen that the Ferrari has been there or thereabouts. It hasn't really been the fastest car in either of the two races this year, but it's definitely been up there. It's a bit of a shame that it hasn't been faster and been able to compete for the win in Australia and also Malaysia, but I think the Ferrari is going to be a solid car. We've obviously seen that it is much better than last year's car, and we can see that the way that Ferrari can evolve a car over the season, maybe not as much as Red Bull, but they can definitely develop a car, and I'd expect Ferrari to be there or thereabouts, like I said with McLaren, but I'd expect the Ferraris to be about 4th, 5th, 6th, and probably by the end of the day you'll see them up there fighting for 2nd and 3rd on the podium, just depending on what happens really. There's obviously going to be some sort of crash or something, which means Alonso's up there, because he had a really disappointing Malaysian Grand Prix, because obviously he went off into the gravel on lap 2, I think it was, and I'm sure he doesn't want to repeat something like that, so he's going to be a bit more cautious, I'm sure, but I'm sure that the Ferrari will be up there or thereabouts. Probably won't be going for the win, but I hope it's up there, because the Ferrari is a good team, just hasn't had the success over the last couple of years, and I'm sure they want to be back up the top, and I think this might be a race that might put them a bit closer up there, but it's going to be hard. Obviously the Ferrari team has a lot of resources, but I think that they're going to be overruled by a couple of teams this time, and it's going to be hard for them to win this race. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is Lotus. They've had a really strong start to the season. Obviously, Kimi Raikkonen won the Australian Grand Prix. They had a less eventful Malaysian Grand Prix, with only Grosjean and Raikkonen only securing a couple of points. But the Lotus is going to be the car, in my mind, you've got to look out for in this race, because China has the huge back straight, where obviously we saw a couple of years ago where I think it was Buemi's wheels came off right at the end of the straight, and we've seen some really good moves at the end of the straight in the last couple of years, and I think the Lotus is the car to look out for, because if we look at the knowledge we have learnt from Malaysia and Australia, we can see that the Lotus is a very fast car in a straight line, and that's going to be very, very good for them at this race, because obviously that long back straight, and obviously the home straight is pretty long as well. So I think you're going to see this year the Lotus is going to be very strong here in China, but it's going to be hard to rival some of the other teams like Mercedes and Red Bull, I think, here. But they're definitely going to be there or thereabouts. I think they are going to be on the podium, Lotus. One of the drivers at least will be, I think, in my opinion. As long as they get the strategy right, I think they'll be right up there. But it's going to be an interesting one for Lotus. I think they've got the car to maybe possibly go for the win this time. But it's just how they play the strategy, really, to see where they end up at the end of this race. So I briefly talked about Mercedes there, and now I'm going to talk about them once again, because last year was probably their best ever race in Formula 1 for Mercedes. Well, in the last couple of years, let's just say the Mercedes of the last 3 or 4 years. They had a really good race. They qualified 1-2 on the grid. Schumacher was right up there as well. Rosberg got the pole position and just drove away from the field to take the win. An absolutely amazing race, showing that Nico Rosberg is one of the most dominant drivers around China, because if we look back over the last couple of years, Rosberg has collected many podiums on the Chinese racetrack. It seems to be a track that he really loves, and it also seems to be a track that the Mercedes generally used to be very good. I don't think it's going to be as good this year, but I think with the talent that is in both their drivers this year, I think we're going to see the Mercedes right up there going for the win this time. They've had a pretty good start to the season in Australia and Malaysia, and I would not expect them to go off the pace suddenly. I expect them to be right up there and probably going for the win. It'd be a bit disappointing if they weren't up there on the podium. I think one of their drivers will definitely be up there. I think you're going to have to say slightly a little bit more Nico Rosberg. It seems to be the track that he just dominates, and I think that Nico Rosberg has got a good car underneath him, and obviously the driver and the talent is right there as well. But never forget about Lewis Hamilton. He's one of the fastest drivers on the grid. Lots of people say he is the fastest, and I would not disagree with that. He is very fast, and I think if he gets the setup right, he is going to be right up there challenging for the win as well. So expect a great weekend from Mercedes. I think they'll be disappointed if they don't have a good weekend, but overall I think it's going to be a good weekend for Mercedes. Next, let's talk about Sauber. Now, they've had not the most impressive start to the season, but they've had a pretty solid start to the season, I'm not going to lie. They've had a pretty good sort of start. I suppose they didn't really expect to have as bad a start as they did, because I think they went into the season expecting a bit more, but they've had a pretty solid start. Sauber doesn't look like it can compete with the top 3 or 4 teams, but it could be there or thereabouts. We saw what Nico Hülkenberg did in Malaysia. He was right up there in the top 5, I think, for a couple of laps, and he was definitely up there challenging some of the big teams, and definitely deserving of that, because he didn't get to even go out and race in Australia because of a car problem. And I think also his teammate Esteban Gutierrez is the guy you want to look out for. He has been very, very consistent over the last couple of races. I think he's finished 12th and 13th. He's always been the first car a lap down, but that shows quite a lot of talent in Esteban Gutierrez. He's only had 2 races in this car, and he's already showing that he's right up there and very close to the points. He's actually been a lot better than Bottas, in my opinion, in the first start of the season, and I had a lot of high hopes for Bottas, and I think he's a great driver, but just hasn't had the car underneath him to perform. But Gutierrez is definitely performing how I thought he would. He's performing well. Maybe he's outperforming how I thought, because he came from GP2 and maybe not having the most experience in the world, but Gutierrez has definitely got a good car underneath him. He's got a good teammate, and I think that Gutierrez might even have a shot at the points here. But who knows? I think when you get to the next round in Bahrain is when you're going to see Gutierrez probably challenging a bit more for points, because he's raced a lot more around there in GP2. But yeah, the Sauber hasn't been the most impressive car at the start of the season, but I definitely think that it's going to be there or thereabouts in this race. Probably once again racing with the McLarens, probably just in front of the McLarens, racing for the low end of the points. But I think they're going to pick up on some of the other teams' sort of unfortunate races and probably pick up more points than they expect. But the Sauber's not looking too bad. It's not looking the fastest, but it's definitely a car to watch out for in some of these races coming up soon. Next up, let's talk about Force India. Now, they had probably the most unlucky Malaysian Grand Prix I've ever seen from a team. They just had probably the worst pit stops I've ever seen. They had some sort of problems in the pit. I think it was with the wheel gun or something with the wheel nut, meaning they couldn't secure the wheel on properly, meaning they had to retire both of the cars. And I think that's the first time in like 2 or 3 years that both Force Indias have retired from a race, and that is disappointing when both of them drivers could have gone for points there. Suttel and also De Resta were looking very strong there. Probably De Resta had the upper hand, but only slightly. And it's just a shame for both of them that they had to retire from that race, because if the pit stops had gone perfectly, I think you would have seen Suttel and De Resta probably fighting for about 7th and 8th, just in front of the Saubers. And yeah, just a disappointing weekend for Force India in general, but I think they'll bounce back in China. Probably both of their drivers fighting at the low end of the points. Probably both of them actually securing about 8th and 9th. I think is going to be a good position for Force India here. Once again, I think they just want to score some points and just try and pull away from Sauber and McLaren in the Constructors' Championship, and maybe try and stay in the top 5. I know it's going to be hard, but they're going to try their best to try and do that. But yeah, I think Force India will definitely bounce back in China, and I think they've got a decent car underneath them to do so, and it's going to be interesting. It's definitely going to be a fun race for Force India, because they've got nothing to lose now. They've got to go out there and definitely show that they've got the car underneath them after having a very unlucky Malaysian Grand Prix. So the next team I want to talk about is Williams. Such an unfortunate start to the season for the Williams car. It is probably one of the most dreadful Williams cars we've seen over the last couple of years. I think 2011 was the only one that was worse, but the Williams is really looking very poor in pace. Maldonado was very close to points until he retired. I can't remember, I think he went off into the gravel or something. And, you know, Maldonado had a very unlucky race there in Malaysia. He definitely could have been right there just at the low end of the points, but he just had the unlucky race and ended up him, I think, finishing low down the order. And Bottas was a similar story. He was pretty fast, but he just didn't have the car underneath him to really get the result. And I think he ended up about 11th or 12th in Malaysia, showing that he was just about there to pick up the scraps as somebody crashed in the last dying laps. But just an unlucky start for the season in general for Williams. I don't think they're going to be there in China. I think we're going to have to wait till Spain for them to really see a sort of a big update. And I think in Spain we're going to see them perform quite well. We saw them perform quite well last year, obviously, because they picked up the win. And but I think when we go to Spain, we'll have some good updates for Williams. But just at the moment, the car is not there, and that's unfortunate. But I think over time we'll see the Williams improve, and hopefully it'll be as good as the Force India and Sauber very, very soon, because Williams is my favourite team, and I think they deserve to have a little bit more, because they just had such an unlucky start to the season, and I really hope that they do a little bit better, to be honest. But yeah, China's going to be a big one for them. If they can score points, that'll be great, but it's going to be definitely very hard for them to do so. So now we'll get into Toro Rosso, because they've had a pretty decent start to the season, not gonna lie. They normally don't have the most wonderful start to the season, but they normally just pick up the points when they can throughout the whole season. But this year's Toro Rosso looks quite a lot better than the Williams. They managed to pick up 1 point in Malaysia, which is obviously good, and you know, showing that the Toro Rosso can be there when it needs to be. And I'm happy for Toro Rosso, because they don't normally have the greatest start to the season, and now finally they've had a half decent start, and I think this is going to be only the beginning. I actually genuinely think the Toro Rosso can be a lot better, and I think in Spain we'll see a good update, and I really hope that really the Toro Rosso can get some good updates and mean it can actually be up there fighting maybe for 5th, 6th, 7th positions, because they've had so much unlucky results over the last couple of years after putting in so much effort into the team. And I think finally, this year they've got a car they can work on quite a bit, and this year's Chinese Grand Prix is definitely going to be a big one for them, because they're normally pretty good in a straight line, Toro Rosso are, and I think this can be a good race for them. If they can get into the right position at the right time, they have the right strategy, I think that Toro Rosso can score some decent points here in China. But I'm looking forward to it. I'm hoping that they can do well, but we'll see. You know, obviously times will change. Maybe it's a crazy race, meaning that Toro Rosso can get 1-2 on the grid. Who knows? But yeah, that's going to be the end of Toro Rosso, and let's get on to Caterham, because they've probably been the worst team on the grid to the start of the season. I mean, obviously the Williams has been pretty bad, but I actually generally think that Caterham's the worst car on the grid at the moment. They seem to be most of the time behind the Marussias, and they seem to be quite a lot slower than the Marussias, probably about even a second slower. And I think that the Caterham's really just going to be aiming to be in front of the Marussia at the end of this Chinese Grand Prix. it's going to be a hard one. But I think Peak and Van der Garde have got the talent underneath them to pull out some good results. But it's just overall been a not great start to the season for Caterham. And they've been pretty much owned by Marussia, because the Marussia's had a pretty decent car here, and I think they've got Kers finally this year, so they finally got the sort of the car underneath them to actually challenge the Caterham. So let's move on to Marussia briefly before we end this video. They've had a pretty decent start to the season. In Australia, it was a very great race for Bianchi. Bianchi was only like 100th of a second behind Vettel's fastest lap time in Australia, and they also showed some really good pace in Malaysia. And I think Jules Bianchi is the man you want to look out for, because I think out of all of the new teams, or the two new teams, he is going to be the guy to score the first point. He is lightning fast. He is, I think now personally, he deserved a much better seat for this year, because now we can see what he can do in the Marussia. I think Jules Bianchi is the guy to look out for this year, and definitely next year he's going to be on fire if he doesn't get a bad seat, if he doesn't get a good seat, because he definitely deserves a good seat. And yeah, Marussia, they're going to be right at the end of the points, I think, this year. I think they might be able to maybe get close to the points here in China. We'll see, but it's definitely going to be a good race for them. But yeah, thank you for watching this video, guys. I appreciate it. If you do like this video, you can leave a like on it. That would be awesome. And if you want to share this out with friends, that would be awesome too. And if you haven't subscribed already, you can subscribe. But yeah, thank you for watching, guys. I appreciate it. I really like doing these race previews, and I love putting out the karting footage in the background. Lots of people enjoy it, so I like doing it too, because go-karting's fun, and I like recording it and uploading it. So thank you for watching, guys. I appreciate it. I'll see you in the next video. It's been Alex. I'm out of here. Goodbye.